I had so much fun the other day commenting about Graham Plattner's race that um, I decided to make another post. Today, I want to talk about the war in Iran and where I think this thing is headed. Well, really, all it is a quagmire. And, if you think about Iraq or Vietnam or any of these other big conflicts that came before it, um, or you've studied foreign policy or history, like I have, and I've always been kind of a history nerd, a history buff. Um, I give you my quick take on the war in Iran, which I felt was real unnecessary, and obviously we've been goaded into this thing by our allies, Israel, and by Netanyahu and their out of control regime that we've been funding. Um, as they have been on their murderous genocide in Israel. And I'm sorry if you don't feel it's a genocide, but that's what it is, factually, if you've been following this thing. And I get most of my news through independent journalists online. And I also watch a little bit of the mainstream from the left and the right. I try to get a little bit of everything so that I get balanced takes and I have balanced views because I try to hear a little bit from all sides, the center, the left, the right, all the above. But I do follow independent journalists on a regular basis. So anyway, I give you my take on Iran. I do feel that Israel and Netanyahu have been pulling Trump along by the nose. I don't think that it was necessary to bomb their nuclear installations and go after their uranium enrichment, all that. I mean, this is just the latest excuse or reason that they're giving us to unilaterally go and bomb or invade another foreign country. And I know that Iran has been a long time foe of the United States. They do have proxies like Hamas and the Houthis and the group up in Lebanon, Hezbollah. Hezbollah is probably Iran's biggest proxy. But these other groups all have their own reasons for fighting Israel. A lot of it has to do with survival. Um, and obviously, if you followed the Israeli Palestinian conflict at all, whether just recently you've been following it or you know more about the history of how Israel even became a nation state after World War II, you would know that the Palestinians have been treated terribly and that there is a genocide going on over there, regardless of what your views are politically or whether you're Christian, Jewish, Muslim, whatever. That's just the fact. The fact of the matter is that unfortunately, our tax dollars have been going to fund this genocide. And then, Israel's been wanting a fight with Iran and been trying to take out the Iranian regime for decades. So now that they finally have Trump in a vulnerable position with all this crap that's out there at the Epstein files, and there's a lot of reporting and also speculation to suggest that Epstein might have been a Mossad agent, that he might have had CIA ties. I don't know for sure what he was, but we've even had Vice President J.D. Vance in an interview with comedian Tim Dillon. He said that Epstein was intelligence. That's what the vice president said. And many other people in the know have said that this guy had intelligence ties. So, whatever kind of sex trafficking blackmail ring this guy was running, it was tied in with more likely than not Mossad, and he probably had some CIA ties as well. It's rumored that Epstein may have been um, working for the CIA back in the 1980s. I know that's what independent journalist Whitney Webb and some others have said. They think Epstein might have actually been CIA. Ryan Grimm, another independent journalist I follow, has done some reporting on that. But anyway, basically, there is no way out in Iran. And even though the U.S. and Israel might dwarf them militarily, um, Iran has a formidable fighting forces and formidable military. And there's no way to remove that regime. There's no way to get them out of power or to quote unquote win a war over there without putting boots on the ground. It's just not possible. Um, and Iran does have pretty tight control over the Strait of Hormuz. And of course, they've been choking the global oil supply for ever since this conflict started back in February. And whether Trump or our administration of the United States or Israel, whether anyone likes it or not, um, they do have a pretty well outlined strategy on how to muck up the global oil supply, and it could only get worse if this conflict intensifies. And boots on the ground really are not an answer. I don't think anyone has the appetite for that after all these other forever wars and all the lies and the forever wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that we've had in recent decades. President Trump knows that boots on the ground for him would be a big political loser. But he's also follows the stock market and the economy, and he knows that these high gas prices are also unacceptable and untenable politically for him because we have a midterm election coming up in 5 months or however, it's kind of around the corner at this point. And even with all the gerrymandering things that Trump and the Republicans have done, they're looking at probably going to take record losses in at least in the U.S. House in this upcoming midterm election because of all of Trump's unpopular numbers now when it comes to the economy, when it comes to inflation, gas prices, the war, etc. All this stuff's unpopular. And so Trump knows they have to find a solution. And really, the only answer with Iran is diplomacy. However, they get this mess worked out, I don't know. Okay. I'm not a diplomat and I'm not in the administration. I think that some of these people that are over there negotiating, like Jared Kushner and the Vice President J.D. Vance, has been involved, and others, some of Trump's other cabinet appointees. I'm not sure they know what they are doing. In fact, it's pretty evident that they are kind of flying by the seat of their pants. But the only solution in Iran is not a military one, because if it does turn into boots on the ground and this thing intensifies, number one, it's Israel first. It's not America first. And that's one thing that's pissed off a lot of MAGA because they thought Trump was going to be a president who would govern, put America first, especially in his second term. Most of that has not happened. And I'm an independent. I'm not really part of MAGA or, on the right or anything like that. But I still follow all this stuff from, keeping up with the news and current events. And Trump has, now he's alienated himself from a lot of his allies that helped him get in there, like Tucker Carlson, like Candace Owens, like all these people on the right who are pissed because he has abandoned MAGA. I mean, more tax cuts for the rich while you cut Medicaid and food stamps, and then also you go and start another war just because you're goaded into it by Israel. And I mean, really, they've never given any good justification for bombing Iran, and there is no way out other than diplomacy. So that's where I'm out on. That's where I'm at on this thing, and I don't know how they get a deal worked out or how exactly it's going to happen. For one thing, you got to rein in Israel, which nobody's been able to do at this point. Israel seems to have control over the White House and Congress for the most part. And even though the American people are tired of Israel's bullcrap and we're tired of their wars and funding their wars and their genocide in Gaza and everything else, until we get new leadership in there, we're stuck with the current mess. And, whether Trump can find an answer or resolve this thing peacefully and diplomatically remains to be seen. Obviously, they're trying to work something out because I think Trump is smart enough to realize that his presidency rests in the balance here. And if this thing does escalate and we end up with boots on the ground over there, it's not going to be a good thing for our military. It's not going to be a good thing for the country. And that would be a very long and nasty war that would probably be, by all regards, worse than the Iraq war. And it's something that would put the whole Middle East and much of the globe in turmoil. And that would only help our adversaries, Russia and China, because the more unstable things are politically in the U.S., the more that helps, our big adversary, China, and Russia is another one. Um, but anyway, my take on it is diplomacy is the only answer here. So the quicker they can wrap this thing up and get our troops out of harm's way and get the straits back open, um, and if they can come up with a deal for Iran to give up their weapons grade uranium, that's great. But I'm not sure Iran's going to make that deal because they know that um, they need to have a nuke for the survival of the regime, just like Jong Un in North Korea. Everybody's following that model now and knowing that, hey, if we get a nuke, the U.S. will probably leave us alone. They don't want to end up like Gaddafi. They don't want to end up with like Saddam Hussein. And so diplomacy is the only answer here. And the sooner we get it, the sooner everything else will be good and the gas prices will stabilize. Maybe we can actually start addressing inflation back here in the States, which is totally out of control and just eating people alive right now. And that's why Trump's losing a lot of his MAGA base, other than the diehards and, I don't know, the boomers, the people who are not affected by a lot of this mess of high prices and out of control, unaffordable housing and gas prices that are killing people, and it goes on and on. So my take on it is the sooner we get diplomacy with Iran and then we end that conflict, and the sooner we get Israel under control, because they're not under control right now. They bombed like 8 countries. Uh, and anyone that kind of thinks Israel's the good guys, I think you got your blinders on. I'm not trying to, I mean, it's okay to support our allies, but at some point you got to rein them in too when they're, um, bad actors in the region and bad actors on the global front as well. And right now that's not happening. So nobody's happier that Trump's president than Bibi and Israel. But how long will that last? That's not sustainable either. And we need to wrap this thing up with Iran, or elsewise the economic problems that we're facing now are only going to get worse. And allies of ours, like all the folks in Europe, um, who can't afford their fuel now, and we've heard there's not going to be less travel in Europe this summer because of they can't afford jet fuel. And so there's a lot of very serious things out there. Apparently farmers are not getting their fertilizer right now in the States either due to this conflict. I've also heard there's a helium shortage, because most of the helium is produced in 2 places, Texas and Iran. And so the whole thing is just a big mess. And anyone that thinks we can just go in and roll over Iran militarily is a fool, in my opinion. Diplomacy is the only answer. That's where I'm at with it. All right. Let me know what you think. Peace. I'll talk to you later.